Today is a good day, a day where I especially love my job. That's because today we get to the last part of our Scooter Model 101 series, which is Lambretta 101. Since we needed an expert again, we drove a bit through Germany, all the way to the beautiful eastern Bavaria to Jockey's Boxenstopp. As you can slowly see behind and next to me, this is a paradise. Not only for classic scooters, but especially for Lambretta scooters. Especially because I have never been here before and I'm very interested in this shop. That's why I'm very pleased that we are able to present the Lambretta to you here today. Here he is, today's expert and owner of Jockey's Boxenstopp, Jockey. Give it up for Jockey. Lambretta riders already know you, but of course we want to attract a lot of our other viewers to a Lambretta as well, especially newcomers that are also interested to buy a Lambretta. So it would be nice if you could briefly introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Jockey, and as Jesko already mentioned, a few people may know me already, especially Lambretta drivers, because I've been doing this for a relatively long time now. It all started in 1986. When I bought my first Vespa. But the design of the Lambretta somehow caught my eye, and in 1989 I finally bought my first Lambretta scooter. Inevitably, I had to tinker with it and immediately became addicted, and that's how I got here today.
When did you come up with the idea that you could make a living out of it, or start your own business with it?
The idea has been around for a long time, but I finally put it into practice in 1996.
As you can see, we already sit on Lambretta scooters. And similar to Vespa, Lambretta has also different series, and that's exactly what we want to show you today. What you can see here is basically the first Lambretta series. Well, not the first model, but rather a later model from the first series. But that's how it all started. Can you explain what is characteristic to the early Lambretta series?
The early series started in 1947 with the Model A. It had very small wheels, initially 7 inches, later 8 inches. Also, they were mostly open built and the leg shield was only going up to about here. And in the back, everything was open, no side panels or anything. One characteristic of the engine is actually the encapsulated carbon shaft drive.
That's also a complex mechanism, isn't it?
Very, very laborious, yes. In the end, it's quite a pain for mechanics. That's why they're not very widespread and popular here. But nevertheless, they're beautiful vehicles and also rare.
Especially
the late models of the early Lambretta series had a very nice side view. This is also a very distinctive feature compared to later models. Similar to Vespa, initially small wheels and complex engineering with lots of small parts. I can confirm that. I have overhauled such engines myself, and that is only something for people who have a pronounced masochistic tendency, because you have so many small parts and pieces that it's just a pain to work with. But the cardan shaft was a pretty good idea. It was very progressive back then, wasn't it?
In the end, it simply is a closed system where you don't have to deal with the chain lubrication, wear and tear or things getting dirty. It really was a good solution.
But anyway, we won't talk about this model today, at least not more than we already have. So let's move on to the next series. The successor to those early cardan shaft models was the series that we see over here. But we'll talk about them a bit later today. First, we are going to show you the small Lambretta models.
Similar to the Vespa, Lambretta was researching the market and found that especially women and youngsters were in need for a cool vehicle. That's why they started with the development of a 50cc series.
Und damit war der Entwicklungsschritt zur 50er gesetzt.
So, like Vespa, Lambretta had no 50s in its range before.
Exactly.
They first started to come out with the small frames.
Genau, so ist es. Und die fingen dort
Exactly. I think they started developing in 1962. Everything was shrunk a bit down.
geschrumpft. Es gibt auch wirklich
Also, there are no identical parts. Everything is reduced in size and the engine was different. Development took a long time, but in the mid-60s the Model J hit the street.
und Mitte der 60er kam dann das Modell J auf die Straße.
Ja. Auch interessante Technik.
Interesting from the technical side is that these have a self-supporting steel structure, like a Vespa, right?
Konstruktion wie eine Vespa, oder?
That's correct. You might think that they copied a bit here, because the original building concept of Lambretta was always the tubular frame with attached sheet metal parts. Here everything is different. This is a self-supporting sheet steel body, just like a Vespa.
Ja. Und charakteristisch Kettenantrieb.
Characteristic are also the chain drive and the vertical cylinder, relatively easy to recognize. Everything is dimensioned in such a way that it's enough for a 50cc scooter. But what I still find very characteristic for this series is that the designers went a little crazy at some point and just built something like that thing over here.
Oder so sind und haben dann halt sowas gebaut.
Kann man schon so sagen. Also ich glaube, die Verkaufszahlen...
Well, yeah, I think the sales figures of the small Lambretta weren't that great. So they thought about it and wanted to build something futuristic. That's why they hired Bertoni, the designer of the time. And he designed the model Louis.
Die Louis entworfen.
Und das ist ja wirklich
This is a really futuristic vehicle with these handlebars here. It almost looks like a motorized Bonanza bike. I think it has also become an absolute icon, right?
eine Ikone geworden, oder?
Ja, also das war...
Yes, it was really ahead of its time in terms of design. I think it was just a bit too far ahead because the sales figures weren't that great either. But nowadays it's a super cool model.
Echt ein super cooles Modell, finde ich.
I think it's cool too. I don't really want to drive it, but I think it's very futuristic and I like it. But we're not talking about this model series either today. Actually, we're talking about this model series.
So, und jetzt stehen wir hier vor zwei Vertretern.
Now we are standing in front of two representatives of the Li123, the LGP series. Or what would you call this series?
Ja, es ist nicht so einfach. Es gibt eigentlich keine...
Yeah, it's not that easy. There's actually no main term, as it's the case with Vespa. You can characterize them by the lying cylinder. That's a feature that all models, from the TV to the DL, have in common.
Der TV bis rauf zur DL.
And we don't want to go into too much detail just yet, because that is exactly the model series that we want to introduce to you in part 2 of our video. Those are the models that have been sold the most, that have the largest fan base, the most accessories available, and the largest tuning scene. We just wanted to introduce you to the other models too, so that you can classify it a bit, and to show you that there is a kind of analogy to the Vespa model series. Referring to the Vespa terminology, this would be the Lambretta large frame series. And what this series is all about, that we will show you in part 2 of this video.
Und dann stellen wir euch das vor.